Hello and welcome back, everybody. Good to be back. I've had a week off. It's been the holidays, getting a chance to enjoy the big summer heat over here and actually get a bit of time with the fam, as you do. And now back for another podcast. So really good to be back and good to be chatting to you today about managing expectations. I think this is a really big one. I've been wanting to cover this one for a little while. I've just been trying to work out exactly how I'd be talking about this one. But today's podcast is all about managing expectations. How do you ensure the very best results and relationships with your clients? And this is a really important topic, because if you don't manage expectations with people, what you might find is you get misalignment, misunderstanding, scope creep. You start doing things that you didn't originally agree to, and you start doing things that actually don't work for you and don't work for the client, right? It's really important. Are you having relationships, engagements, or even just in your personal life where there's misunderstanding, where certain people are acting in a certain way and it's not to your expectations, and then you end up falling out, or you end up doing work you don't want to, or you end up creating something that somebody doesn't like? Managing expectations is an absolutely crucial part of actually leadership and being a good leader, because good leaders position people well. They help those people understand what is it they're about to produce and what they're not, what to expect and what not to. And then when they go ahead and hit those expectations, everybody is happy. And a key part of our leadership, of course, is keeping people happy and keeping your relationships fruitful and always positive and heading in the right direction. But managing expectations is actually really quite a difficult thing to do. It's not a skill that comes naturally to everybody, and most people aren't going around really considering other people's expectations when they go through their working lives or even their personal lives, right? It is something that you have to do proactively. It's something that you have to think about. It's something that you need to be aware of and actively doing in order to keep everything good and on an even keel. If you're not actively thinking about managing expectations, then you are not managing expectations and you are exposing yourself to a risk further down the line. So what do we mean by managing expectations? Managing expectations means that I'm having conversations with you where my understanding is equal to your understanding. The things I create are equal to the things that you want. The way I act is understood by you. The way I do things is understood by you. And it's a really key part of business, but it's also something that you can use in your personal life as well. Being really clear with your partners, with your friends, on why you make decisions the way that you do, why you create certain things, why you act in certain ways. When you buy a present, for example, why you bought that present or not, right? It's actually a really key part of everything that we do in our day-to-day lives, and it really takes thought and understanding to get to. And the way you manage expectations properly is that you actually spend your time thinking about other people's perspective, and you shift your mindset to start looking at the world from other people's perspectives. Media psychologist Emma Kenny described this as the majority of human beings fail to look at things from other people's perspectives, and this leads to personalizing and internalizing when friends or partners fail us. Instead, if we actually look at what's going on in their lives and explore the pressures they are facing, we can de-escalate our difficult feelings and find ourselves in a more supportive context. What does that mean? Well, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of a classic partner relationship, right? So let's say if our other half gets us like a practical birthday present, like a new set of saucepans, instead of a nice piece of jewelry that they got us, we can immediately see that as they don't love us as much as than I have. I've spent the time, they've just got me a bunch of saucepans. But of course, in their head, they might be thinking, well, they like cooking, they're always talking about how rubbish the saucepans are, I'll get them a new set, they'll love it. Right? So they're thinking about your needs and what would make their lives better. So it's an interpretation difference that's causing the issue here. And once we start focusing on what we're grateful for, then the exact outcome becomes less relevant. Right? If you're actually, just because you're getting a bunch of saucepans doesn't mean those saucepans aren't really useful. Doesn't mean they don't offer you a load of utility. But if you just compare it directly to the jewelry that you got, you might think, oh, that person cares less about me. They don't. So how does it happen in business? In business, it happens when there's misunderstandings between you and the client. It's when you say you're going to deliver something and they believe that thing is different, or they believe you're going to deliver something else. Or maybe you say you're going to deliver something in a week and they think they're going to get the whole thing in a week, but actually what you meant was just a little thing, right? Or maybe they have an expectation of you to come back to them in a week and you don't do it. There's so many different things that cause differences in expectations. And again, the key to it is thinking about their world and their perspective. What's the context of the thing that you're talking about? If you're talking about a new PowerPoint presentation you're going to put together for that person, do they have the same understanding of what you're about to deliver to them as you do? Because you're the expert. So have you explained it to them well? Have you ensured that you have listened to what they need and you're really responding to their needs? Or are you just creating something that you think is best and it works better for you than it does for them? Right? What is their context? What have they heard? Right? Are you saying, oh, why didn't this person turn up to a meeting? Whereas actually they might not have even been invited. Or maybe they heard from somebody else that they don't need to attend and that's why they didn't turn up to the meeting. Right? What's the context for the decisions they're making? And how can you ensure that that context is as fleshed out, is as accurate, is as realized as possible? So always be asking yourself, do I feel like this person totally understands what I'm doing? Do I feel like this person totally understands what I'm promising them, what I'm going to deliver, when I'm going to be talking to them? Are they totally on the same page as me, or do they actually differ in opinion? Do they actually not want me to do something? Do they actually think that we need to change something and I haven't actually asked them about what that should be? Because sometimes with managing expectations, you might have a whole room of people and everybody nods apart from one person that's in the corner and they're like, And if you're really thinking about it and you look around that room, you might notice that person. You might notice that person going, And then there's your opportunity to ask that person, hey, Terry, doesn't look like you're totally convinced. Have you got any questions that we haven't covered yet? Or maybe you come out of a meeting and say, I don't think that particular person fully got what we were talking about, and maybe I need to pick up with that person separately just to go through it in more detail. Ensuring that you're bringing people along the journey with you and that their expectations are the same as your expectations. So the first thing, in order to be able to do that, is to set clear deliverables. Deliverables means something that you're going to create in the course of this interaction. So setting very clear deliverables. What is it exactly that you're going to deliver to your client? Right? And this could be working for any business, anytime, and it can also be working at home, as I say. Right? So let's say you're a photographer. Does your client fully understand exactly what you're going to deliver? The number of hours, the wedding album, if you're going to send them the photos, how are you going to send them? If there's a gallery, what does that gallery look like? How many photos are they going to get at the end of the day? What would those photos look like? What would they be able to do with those photos? What can't they do with those photos? All these niche questions that they may have, do they have full clarity on exactly how this thing is going to operate? Or are they in the dark about something? Can you provide them further information? And sometimes they may already have that information, but maybe they haven't read it, or maybe they just don't understand it. So it's not always a case that you can say, oh yeah, they've got the information and therefore they should know, right? Try and think about and assess that person and say, does this person know what I need them to know? Or for whatever reason, do I think they're not quite in the right place yet or not? I really consider, are they getting what they need in order for me and them to have a really strong, good relationship where everybody is happy with the end result? So sometimes you have to pore over the details of exactly what you're going to do. And this is really important, though. Even though it might feel a little bit boring, a little bit into the detail, and you just want to go on and get in there and get stuck in and deliver your product, do the thing, sometimes you have to spend time on being really, really clear what it is that you're going to deliver. Right? That might be through maybe a brief. Maybe you get them to fill out a brief or a questionnaire, or maybe you have a sit-down conversation with them. Just going through the finer details of exactly what it is that they're paying for, what it is that they're about to receive from you is really, really important. You also want to understand what is the need to know for them and what isn't. So someone at a very high level in an organization might need to know a totally different thing than someone in a lower level doing the detail. Right? At the high level, if you're talking to, a senior manager or something, they might just need the overview. They just need the kind of the breeze over, 5-slide summary of whatever it is that you're doing. Someone further down, someone who's getting into the nitty-gritty, they might need the every single different little task and different action and different thing. So when it comes to managing expectations, are you considering the person and what that person is likely to be expecting? So if you go to someone very senior and you try and give them all the minutiae of the detail, you're not managing their expectation. Their expectation being, I just wanted a brief overview. This is too much detail. I don't even do this stuff. On the flip side, if you go with a really high-level plan to a person right down into the detail and you don't provide them with the detail, they might come out of that meeting and say, yeah, I didn't get anything out of it. Right? I didn't get any answers to any of the questions that I wanted. So who are you talking to is equally important. Who are you talking to? What are their expectations from the conversation that you're about to have? What is it that they need to know relative to where they are in the process? So, of course, a good way to really have good relationships is to actually get to know people in person. The power of meeting someone face-to-face rather than over the phone, rather than over Skype, is absolutely huge, right? If you meet a new person for the first time, if there is an opportunity to meet with them in person, face-to-face, you should do it, especially if they're a significant person in what you're going to be doing over time, right? Relationships matter. They matter to how you're going to get on with that person, the expectations of that person, the tolerance of that person, and everything else, right? So if there's an opportunity to get to know them in person, then do. And, that might mean just grabbing them for a coffee. It might only be 5 minutes here and there. Or it might just mean, changing the subject outside of business and getting to know them, some of their interests, some of their family life, some of their home life, the other things that they're doing. Try and get to know that person well. And then when you're coming into a room of new people, establish how it is that you're going to be working with those people. So establish those ways of working. Tell them, look, we're going to have check-ins every week. You're going to get a summary from me at the end of the week. Each week we're going to provide you with these details. Here are the timescales for all the things that we're going to give to you, right? Establish those ways of working. Say to them, we will be communicating through email, or we'll be communicating through Slack or whatever, right? Tell them where you're going to be communicating so they're not missing out on any communications. Tell them how meetings will run. Tell them that they might receive an agenda beforehand. Tell them all the different nuts and bolts in terms of how you can work, and bring them into and be inclusive with them in that conversation. So say, this is how we work. Does that work for you? And they might say, actually, I could do with that report twice weekly for X, Y, and Z. Can you send me the report, the status update twice weekly? Cool, no problem. Again, then you're both being clear on what your expectations are, and you're both on an equal ground, and you're both receiving what you need from each other in order to be able to work together and create the best result together. If you don't understand what the other person needs properly, you can't expect to have a good way of working between you. So you have to be clear. You have to say what it is that you need. You have to be out there and actually say it, and you have to try and get out of them what it is they need. Some good questions for that might be, what does success look like for you? Right? What are your thoughts on this? Could you provide me some feedback on this? Right? Really try and flip that conversation around and ask them for their feedback. Help them to feel included in the work and in the conversation so that they feel like they're a part of it. Because that, not only does that create better relationships, it also helps manage those expectations overall. So set out how you're going to work and ensure that everybody's on the same page for those ways of working. And if you're doing something really formal, you might need to get that in writing. Right? You might need someone to send you an email to confirm that of the things that you've agreed in that last meeting, summarize all the things in the meeting, send them an email and say, please confirm that this is your understanding and that we've got everything right. And get that in writing. Especially if you're doing something like coaching or consulting, something where you're charging money over a period of time, you're going to need to have something that clearly states and is clearly agreed to by those people so that you can fall back on it later on, just in case not things go bad, but things get misaligned. People start to diverge in their understandings, and you can go back to that original thing and say, hey, this is what we agreed. They might be asking more of you than you initially promised them, and you can go back to that original list of things and you can say, well, this is what we agreed. So if we need to change that, we need to have a conversation about what the new cost or time or budget or whatever the impacts are of that change. If you don't manage it that way and you just allow things to just change and you just suck them up, you end up doing more work, reducing your own profit line, you get misunderstandings between what it is that's been committed to and what's not. People start to have difference in understandings, especially those who aren't filled in on the changes in the work. It gets messy. And you want to be putting time into that stuff. Now, of course, you might say, well, I don't have the time in what I do to manage these kind of things. And look, it can take a lesser or more an extent, depending on how many people you're working with and what you're doing. But you should be factoring the time it takes in order to manage relationships into the pricing that you're putting out there for whatever service that you are offering, if you are offering a service, right? Because relationships take time. So, increase the amount of time that you're proposing for this stuff to include the time it takes to manage those relationships. Relationships take time. You might spend half a day just trying to keep everything like it was yesterday. I have that all the time. Sometimes I have whole days where I spend the entire day keeping everything as it was yesterday. So don't absorb the cost for that. Work that into your service and say this is a normal expectation of the way that people work and how much time it takes in order to be able to manage those people, those ways of working, those expectations. This is what leaders do. Right? They're aware of that. They're aware of the need for relationship management. They're aware of the need for expectations. They're aware of the time it takes to ensure that everybody is aligned and happy throughout the course of a project, throughout the course of a piece of work. That's why they're so valuable, because a lot of people don't do this, and most people don't look from other people's perspective. They just have the list of things that they need to do, they push that thing out there and they cross their fingers and they leave it to somebody else to deal with whether that works or not. Really, really important. Like, if you want to elevate your job, your role, if you want to get a promotion, you want to move up in the company, this is the stuff that you need to start getting good at in order to be able to get there. And it is leadership, right? Managing expectations is an example of leadership. If you're able to support a group of people to create a great result through the way that you manage those relationships and expectations, that is leading. And that is something that anybody can do. Anyone can start it, anyone can do it. But of course, in order to be able to do that, you need to start taking on that responsibility and putting yourself out there. Because sometimes it's not always easy, and sometimes you have to be very mindful. And it's not, it's not a simple process, it's not a linear process. You have to be very mindful, and you have to be second-guessing people. You have to be thinking about what their motivations are, where they're coming from, what they're doing, all of these things, right? So you really have to be very, very conscious of how you manage those expectations. The best way to do all of this is to be transparent and to be honest in what you're doing. The more transparent, the more honest you can be, the better a relationship you will have. If you think something is going to take longer than it will take, tell people. If you think something doesn't work, tell people. If you think, you don't agree with somebody, tell people. Obviously, do it in a way that's always constructive and inclusive, but at the same time, don't hold back. Don't wait till it gets to a pressure point. Don't wait till it becomes too late. Don't deliver something and then 4 weeks later say, yeah, well, I knew it wouldn't work. Because they're going to say, well, why didn't you tell me that 4 weeks ago? That's a good example of an expectation that hasn't been managed there. Okay, so you need to be transparent and honest and provide people with that feedback. And if you say, look, I don't think this is going to work, and they say, yeah, well, I still want it and we're going to have to do it, you say that's not a problem. I'll record this objection I have in the minutes, and I'll keep it for the records and we can go back to it later on, right? It's not on you to feel like you have to change their minds. You want to try and influence them, but sometimes there's always compromise. Nothing ever works out exactly as you want it to work out. There is always compromise, and sometimes you'll have to do certain things that you may not agree with. But that's okay, assuming the people that you're working with understand your position, what the impacts are, and you've got it out there and you've said it. That's okay. If you don't say anything about it, if you're not transparent, if you're not honest, and you leave it till later and something doesn't work out, it's going to be on you. Because at no point did you offer any objection to this stuff. So you have to put it out there. You have to be brave and make your objections and say, look, this is how I feel about a certain topic, or not. Otherwise, you may end up taking accountability for things, and that's going to reflect bad on you. And you don't want that. So, again, some good questions to ask are, their goals. Because then if someone's saying to you, well, I don't think we should do it that way, I think we should do it this way, you can say, well, earlier you talked to me about your goals, and you said you wanted to achieve X. Well, if we do it that way, it's likely that we're not going to achieve that goal, and here's why. Right, so think about how you're reflecting those back and how you can make those challenges in a way where you can help remind people, you told me what you wanted, you're suggesting we do something that's not going to get you what you wanted, right? And this can be for anything. The good thing to do always is to under-promise and over-deliver. Right? Always be impressing people, right? If you think you need 2 weeks for something, maybe quote it as 3 weeks. And then get it out in 2 and a bit, depending on how things work, right? Try and give yourself more time than you need, and then come in and over-deliver. Come in early. Or try and maybe deliver a little bit less, and then come back to them and say, we've had time to do even more for you, and here it is. Wow them, yeah? You still want to be giving them something awesome, of course you do. But you don't want to be proposing something that's going to stretch you so far that you don't know whether you can actually deliver it or not. Or whether you don't know whether you can actually deliver it on time or not. Right? So be realistic about how long things take, what they're going to get, and then ideally, under-promise, over-deliver. Give them less than everything you would like to give them, but give it to them early and then offer to work on some more and increase that in a certain state because you've got that extra time in there. That's the kind of thing that really wows people. If you overpromise, if you promise them, we're going to give you the word, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, we only need 2 weeks. Here it is, give us 2 weeks, we'll come back in 2 weeks. And then you don't, because it was never achievable in the first place, that's going to set a bad precedent. And of course, this all comes back to relationships. Now your relationship is damaged, and you might not get as much leeway, you might not get as good a result next time, and you've damaged that relationship. So always be looking to wow your client as much as you can by being realistic and then over-delivering. Now, one way of ensuring that you don't end up working really hard on something in the wrong direction is, of course, keeping in contact with them as much as possible, right? Communicate, right? Keep reminding them what you're doing, what actions you're taking, what you're up to, where you are, what to expect, when to expect it, everything. What you're working on, the details of what you're working on. Put in reflections to them, say, look, so I'm hearing you're asking me for this. Am I right in thinking this is what you want, and map it out for them so you can ensure that alignment, right? Always communicate. If you're ever worried about expectations in the room being wrong, if there is conflict in what you are doing, the reason will always be down to the relationship and the communication. Always be down to the two. So you can go back and ask yourself, firstly, what's going on with this relationship? Have they lost faith in us? Have we lost trust somewhere? Is there another factor going on that's distracting this person? And secondly, how's the communication working? Are they challenging us because we haven't been communicating with them? Are they not happy because they're not clear on what we're doing, right? What is it about this situation that either isn't working because of communication or relationships? You can work that out, and it's so easily salvageable. Again, if you get to a point where it becomes bad, you should be falling back and trying to put that face-to-face in again, right? Phone calls, Skype meetings, really hard way to restore relationships. Try and get in face-to-face if you can, if it's possible. Try and get face-to-face with that person and try and have that conversation. If you can't, do it over video if you can, at least, so they can see your face, they can see your reaction. It's not just over the phone and you're just a disembodied voice. And then, apologize if you need to, right? Reset the expectation. Say, look, this was our bad. I know you expected this. I know it hasn't quite worked out like that. That's our fault. I don't think we were particularly clear on what it was that we're actually going to be delivering. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it another week and we'll come back to you and let's talk about exactly what you want. Okay? Be honest. Again, be honest. Be transparent about this thing and say, if you've done something and it's your fault, accept it. Say it's your fault, right? Manage those expectations so that they can then reset and then they can give you the benefit of the doubt for next time. And then almost the last point here is to actually push back. Just because someone says you should be doing something doesn't mean that you're obligated to be doing that thing. You can push back and you should be pushing back. Right? If someone says, look, we need to be doing it this way, and you know that way is not right, then you should be actively pushing back and saying to those people, hey, this isn't going to work. And why it isn't going to work. Always remember that the reason you're in the room in the first place is because they've asked you to be in the room. They brought you in the room for a reason, right? They chose you for a reason, for your skills, for the things that you know. Of course, you should be humble and always be there wanting to learn more and seeing what other people know and seeing how you can grow and learn yourself. But at the same time, you are there for a reason. Don't forget that, right? What is it about you being there that they needed? And now what point are you at where you're like, actually, they're not giving me the benefit of the doubt here for my own skills and expertise? Do I need to push back here and say, actually, look, I really don't think that is a good idea to be able to do that for such and such a reason? Or say, look, we're not going to be able to do that because it's outside of what we originally agreed to. If we were to do that, we need to revisit what we agreed to originally and talk about how we can change that. Talk about how we can revisit what was promised to each other, right? But don't just allow things to happen. It's not going to make you happy. It's not going to make them happy. Always try and push back if you're at a position where you think, no, this is a deal breaker. It's either beyond what I promised to do or it's not how you want it. I mean, when I work shooting weddings, I often get people meeting me for the first time and they say to me, hey, Dan, we really like these photos by a whole bunch of other photographers and their style. Would you be able to produce a wedding album in a style like that? And I say, no, because my style is my style. I'm in the room, they're in the room for a reason, right? They're buying into what I do and the way that I do it. If they don't like what I do and the way that I do it, if they want to try and get somebody else to do it, then I'm not the right person for them. And that's fine. I'm happy with that. They're happy with that. I can just say, look, if you want somebody else's style, if my style doesn't work for you, you should really go and talk to them because this is my style. This is how I shoot. This is how I edit. This is what you're buying. This is the product, the service that you're buying. If that doesn't work for you, that's great. But you need to go and talk to that other person and try and get that other person. Because I can't deliver what you are asking of me. That's just not my style. That's just not how I create things. And that's fine. If you might lose people every now and again. You might lose clients with that, or prospects, I should say. You might lose prospects like that. If you are doing something for someone, there might be a point where you actually have to walk away. Worst case scenario, you might have to walk away and say, hey, this just isn't working. I don't think we're in alignment anymore. I don't think we can come back for that. I don't think what you want is what we agreed. You might need to walk away. It can happen. But you can't just let something keep going and going, accepting what it is and never pushing back. You have to be brave and push back when you need to push back. It's a really important part of managing expectations. If you can't push back properly, you're going to struggle to manage expectations. Now, you should always, of course, be looking for the constructive compromise at the end. But there will be some things that are deal breakers, and you have to say, actually, I can't accommodate that. Again, example for you from my photography, sometimes people will say, hey, can we take 300 quid off of the price that you charge? And I might say, not sure, we can talk about that. And they say, oh, can I also get a free wedding album? And I'm like, no, I can't do that. It pushes my profit margin too small. I can't do that for you. Here's what I can do, but I can't go all the way. I can't go there. It's just the way it is. I'm not going to try and pretend that I can, or try and deliver, half the quality that I would want. The quality that I'm offering is the quality that I'm offering, and this is the value of the thing. And if we can't get to that or get close to that, maybe we don't have a conversation anymore. So, really, really be brave. I know pushing back can be scary, but try and be brave. So, to summarize all the things that we talked about today, pretty much everything you do, all relationships in your life, they are founded on expectations. They're founded on doing things where people are under a similar understanding, and you're helping each other and you're working together to produce a known shared result. If that result is not known, if that result is not agreed upon, if the motivations of those people are not understood, the result's not going to be at a quality level where one or either of those people are happy. And the result is conflict. And that's why if you have a lot of conflict in your life, you need to start looking and asking the question of, am I considering other people's perspectives? Because a lot of the conflict that you might have in your life, in your work, in your business, is likely to be driven by a lack of understanding of other people's perspectives and context. So how can you start putting yourself in their shoes? How can you start thinking about, what do they see? What do they know? What's the context that they have? And how can I understand them better by really understanding what they've received? Most of the stuff you see online doesn't have context. It's one person's view. Even most of the stuff you see on the news doesn't have context and balanced. It's one person's view. Right? It doesn't describe what the other person's experiencing, feeling, knows, shares, etc. So how can you be that person that really thinks about that really helps other people, and that leads others by understanding and supporting shared expectations and shared results? If you can do that, you can be a really strong leader. You don't need to be managing people, right? You don't have to have a team to say, I'm a leader. You can just influence people and drive strong deliverables, strong results with people. That's how you manage expectations. That's how you create an awesome end result for you, your clients, and your business. So that's it. I hope that was helpful, everybody. I hope you've got something out of that. It's really, really nice to be back as well. And let me know your stories about managing expectations. They might be positive. They might be negative. Maybe some of them are a little bit horror story, some of them not. But let me know what your stories about managing expectations are. How have you, or when have you, created a great result, and when have you had a result that wasn't so great, and why wasn't it so great? Let me know. Email me, dan@imdanthomas.com. You can also get me on Instagram. I'm doing tons of stuff on Instagram now, and I really want you to come over and follow me. If you're not following me already, you should, because I get clips and highlights. I'm on Insta stories every single day. I'm sharing motivations and tips and tricks. There's loads more of me, and there's loads more learning to be had over on my Instagram at I'm Dan Thomas. So head over to my Insta and make sure you follow me, because there's so much more stuff on there that you can use and hopefully help you with whatever it is you're doing. So have an awesome weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's going to be a hot one. Enjoy the sun. Take care. And if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. If you haven't left me a review, leave me a review. And I'll see you all again very soon.